Bruce Pearl and Derek Dooley mulling Senate runs. First of all, before we get to that, it'll be What the Age, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. And Caleb, I'll ask you the poll question from earlier. What's grimier? Is it politics or is it college athletics?
I did say politics at first, but I've moved over to college athletics because I actually think coaches lie more in college. I think coaches lie more than politicians. I do. I know that's crazy to say, but I think coaches lie more. And having watched them all now, not the politicians don't lie, but the fake altruism of coaches is worse than the altruism of politicians, honestly.
Coaches and politicians are the same. Pearl is just trying to get a promotion. Some truth to that. And Caleb, who would be the better senator? Would it be Derek Dooley or Bruce Pearl? And I'm going to tell my Bruce Pearl story, which I think I've told you before, but I'm going to relay that once again.
So Derek Dooley, and just so people want to know why we're bringing this up, Derek Dooley is mulling a Georgia Senate run in 2026. He would run against Democratic Senator John Ossoff. And Derek Dooley had a quote recently that in a statement confirming his intent. His quote is, in typical Dooley fashion, Georgia deserves stronger common sense leadership in the U.S. Senate that represents all Georgians and focus on its own results, not headlines. I believe our state needs a political outsider in Washington, not another career politician, to cut through the noise and partisanship and get back to real problem solving. The most vanilla, bland statement anybody ever makes when they run for office, by the way. In terms of who would be
everybody else isn't doing it right, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, everybody else is partisan, and everybody else is not focused on results, and everybody else is for headlines. But I'm one of the real ones. Yeah, they all do that. They all do that, and it's just so sickening. I think though, who would be the better senator between the two? I think Bruce Pearl would be the more effective senator. I think Bruce Pearl knows how to be ruthless behind the scenes. Bruce Pearl would be Kevin Spacey in House of Cards.
Well, I haven't seen that show, but I can imagine what Kevin Spacey's like on that show because I know what the show's about. But I'll say this: two things I'll share about Bruce Pearl. One, Caleb, for those that don't know that are younger than us, he was involved with in taping a prospect and trying to provide NCAA proof that another school was cheating. If you remind everybody of that, and then I'll share my personal story about Bruce.
Yes, when Bruce Pearl was an assistant coach at Iowa, he was recruiting Dean Thomas, and he secretly taped a conversation with Dean Thomas where Thomas admitted Illinois paid him money. He turned that tape over to the NCAA. I believe that was 1989 when that happened. Put Illinois on probation. Pearl then spent 10 years at Southern Indiana, and despite winning at a high level, could never buy a Division I job. He was borderline blackballed from Division I coaching basketball, because of what he did. He got his first job at Wisconsin Milwaukee, had 4 good years there, and then got the job at Tennessee. And then, of course, in the greatest irony of ironies, after being blackballed for snitching on somebody, he then got a show cause from the NCAA for violating rules himself,
which ultimately cost him his job. So,
yeah.
Here's my personal Bruce Pearl story. So I was emceeing at a charity function, and it was literally the day of or day after that he was fired. At worst, it was within 2 days. And I thought, man, their keynote speaker's not showing up. Would you have thought he would have shown up?
No, I mean, I wouldn't have even shown up. I'd have been so petty, I wouldn't have shown up.
No, me neither. You don't have anything invested in the community anymore. So remember that part of it first. And remember the second part of it is that you got to be down. I mean, you got to be really down. And so sure enough, he did show up. So that alone makes me think that he would be a better senator than Derek Dooley, who I think was king of the blaming everybody else. All those dumb press conference things that he said, Caleb, all of those, well, they were prompted by me. They have 2 things in common, but all of those also were ways of deflecting blame, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I totally agree.
Not being a funny guy or being outspoken that would cover up the fact that he was a terrible coach.
I think here's the other part. I mean, Derek Dooley, I'll say this much about Derek Dooley, and I'll say this in his defense more than Bruce Pearl. Derek Dooley's more authentic in press conferences than Bruce Pearl. Is that fair to say? Bruce Pearl is a colorful personality, but it's all calculating. It's all he's thinking things of how he's approaching this, right? Whereas Derek Dooley, I think as much of an unlikable person as he is, and he was unlikable, he was his authentic, unlikable self, right?
I hadn't thought about it like that. I guess I would tend to agree with it now that you brought it up.
Yeah, he was authentically unlikable. I don't know, and I'll be honest, I don't know what would sell better in politics now. Would Bruce Pearl, because we're in such a new age of politics, the TV era is dead. You know, the whole polished, like John F. Kennedy put on makeup and like, you know, say the great speeches that like lasted for like 40 years in politics. I don't think we're in that age anymore. I think people crave authenticity wherever it comes from. Derek Dooley would be much more utterly unlikable than Bruce Pearl running for Senate. But I feel like people would buy into his authenticity a little bit more. Derek Dooley would probably be the one guy to give you a straight talk express, right? Like, for instance, you know, when politicians say, I'm going to bring these jobs back to this district right here, we're going to have so many. Derek Dooley would be the guy to go over there and be like, guys, these jobs aren't coming back. You're not going to get these jobs. He would straight up tell them that, wouldn't he?
Perhaps maybe open to a fault. You don't want to be open in politics a lot. I think Bruce Pearl would be a far better senator personally, just because of the fact that he's so good with people.
All right, let's play this poll question now.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Who would be the better poll? Who would be the better poll? Who would be the better senator? Who do we get? Do we have that up there?
Putting it up now.
Okay.
Bruce Pearl or Derek Dooley.
And let's face it, with that whole thing that happened early in his career with Illinois, I mean, that would be, isn't that an advantage as a politician?
Well, that's why I said Bruce Pearl would be more skilled once he got to Washington than Derek Dooley. I'm saying who would have a better chance of winning, because Derek Dooley, while less likable than Bruce Pearl, is authentic. Now, I'll say this. Part of the skill is faking being authentic. Bruce Pearl, while I think he's fake, I think you would agree that Bruce Pearl is very good at making you believe he's authentic, isn't he?
Yes, I believe that the vast majority of fans do not think of him as fake.
Right.
I don't think many do. And I would point to when he was fired. I mean, he was fired for lying to the school and lying to the NCAA. You have to make a change there, right?
You do.
I don't know that you and I have ever discussed it. So you agree with that. But I bet 70% of the fans still wanted him to keep the job.
They did. He is a very, and this is why I said he has a better chance of winning. He's a very, I mean, why I'm now coming around to, you're right, Bruce Pearl might have a better chance of winning. While I believe in authenticity, Bruce Pearl is one of the people with the rare gift of sounding authentic even when he's not authentic. And you're right. Everybody believed him. I mean, Bruce Pearl, think about this, Dave. Dean Thomas has said he's a snake. And we know he secretly recorded Dean Thomas. You talk about how he kind of basically burned bridges with all of his assistants with the way he took all the buyout money leaving Tennessee at that time. Just lit his relationships on fire. Got caught lying to the NCAA, and yet still, you're right, 70% of Tennessee fans would have won him back tomorrow. And he is so skilled at making you believe that he's authentic because he does things like take his shirt off and paint it for a women's basketball game. And it sounds like he's very genuine doing that. He's a natural born cheerleader, which is very good for promoting a program. And yeah, that's a great sales pitch. He's one of the few that, like, if Derek Dooley tries to be fake, you're going to see right through it. He's not good at it. If he's authentically a jerk, you might buy into it. Bruce Pearl is what Butch Jones tried to be.
I would agree with that. He had the X's and O's. He had the X's and O's foundation that Butch Jones didn't have.
Exactly. And he has the intelligence that Butch Jones doesn't have. And so, you know, the combination, but they're equally somewhat sociopaths, right?
No, I could roll with that. I mean, I think Bruce, and we all are to some extent, right, about ourselves.
Yes.
But you can go too far in that regard. I'm not as down on Bruce maybe as you are. I think that he does care about kids and he does try to develop them. I think, though, if he had to choose between winning a national championship or helping 10 kids get to a professional job in which they they showed their growth from college, I don't think there's any question about it. He's going to take the championship.
Oh yeah, I agree. Here's the one other layer to this though that we have to point out, because this is the nature of politics. If they both were to run, this is so typical Derek Dooley. This is so typical Derek Dooley to do this, Dave, and it's so funny that he's doing it this way. Do you know the fundamentals of an election, right? A midterm election, which is when Derek Dooley is going to run, 2026. A midterm election, almost always the party opposite the president does better in midterm elections, with very few exceptions.
It's true.
It's because midterms are usually just a backlash against the president, whoever that is at the time, and the president's party. People want to have a balance of power. Well, in those scenarios, the swing states are going to lean towards the opposite party. So Georgia, for instance, is a swing state. So Georgia in 2026 would be favored to lean Democratic since the president is a Republican. And only Derek Dooley would pick 2026 to run as a Republican in Georgia. As opposed to waiting until 2028, maybe, when he could run.
So where's our poll question stand? And we might adjust that. I wouldn't mind getting Rick Barnes for president. No, no. I think he is too honest. I think he's one of the rare situations in coaching.
I love Rick Barnes, but I think Rick Barnes is the type of politician who would get railroaded when he got to Washington because he wouldn't be able to do the backroom politicking that's necessary. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of like what people say, why a lot of people think Jimmy Carter was a bad president. He was an honest guy who went to Washington and just didn't know how to play the game of politics in the 70s. And a lot of people disagree with this policy. I'm not getting into the policies. I'm saying the way people think of them as leaders in general. I think Rick Barnes would be like that. He's too good. He's too nice of a guy. He'd get railroaded.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Pearl would go scorched earth against Hamas. Middle East. That. All right. If Pearl gets elected, and I wonder if he'll actually do this. If Bruce gets elected, Stephen will have a job in the energy sector making $10 million a year.
Okay, let's put this out here. Who's more likely to pass a bill that would help their family wealth? Derek Dooley or Bruce Pearl? Bruce Pearl, right?
Yes.
Well, 1,000 times over, isn't he? Like, he's
not even close.
Not even close. Much less likely to think about his constituents and much more likely to think about how this benefits him and his family.
Yeah, I'm the most critical person of all coaches and their integrity or lack thereof. But I agree with Matt. Matt says true. Rick's too good of a person. I actually agree with that. I think he'd feel so. We talked about grimy earlier. I think he'd feel so grimy, Caleb, that wouldn't want the job any longer. That he might just walk away from.
Yeah, I agree. He would. He would feel. He's the type that he would feel like he needs to take a shower afterwards. You guys ever ask, Jesse Ventura always tells the story. Jesse Ventura was governor of Minnesota in the late 90s, and he said, man, when you're in politics for 4 years, I don't know why people want to do this for so long. You feel so dirty after you've been in it for a little while.
Yep. And he's crazy. You heard some of the stuff about Jesse Ventura? Yeah,
but I mean, he also exposed a lot of stuff about the wrestling business that people didn't want to hear during that time.
Was he the reason that we found out that it wasn't fake?
No. But he was the guy who took on Vince McMahon and won twice in wrestling. So, yeah, he's also the one who tried to unionize wrestling in the 80s. And as he was trying to unionize it, you'll love this. Hulk Hogan undercut him because Hulk Hogan was making more money than all the other wrestlers, so he didn't want a union.